and sponsored this event, so thank you all to the volunteers who've done a great job. My name is Jennifer Owen. I am a City Council member representing the Heights, and I will be your moderator for this evening's conversation. Just a couple of quick logistics as we get underway here tonight. We're going to try to start on time and end on time, so we'll be done here tonight at about 7 o'clock. But you'll have an opportunity after that to visit with some of your candidates for school board at Billings Public Schools, and we'll introduce them to you in a few minutes. Dr. Garcia is going to give us a presentation tonight, and to facilitate a quick dialogue and to ensure we get as many questions in as possible, we're going to ask you to write questions down so that we can group them and make sure that we get questions in. I also am a little tech limited. I'm stuck here at a podium. So in the interest of just efficiency, we'll be walking around the room. Some of the volunteers will. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll give you a card and get it written down. Really encourage everybody to ask questions. This is not designed to screen or stop anyone from answering questions. We just want to try to be as efficient as possible. So as the conversation gets underway tonight, please feel free to raise your hand and grab a card and give us those questions for our dialogue part of the evening. As we get started here tonight, we're going to start with some introductions. I'm going to ask all of the candidates for Billings Public School Board to please stand. And then we'll just ask you to very briefly give your name and the seat that you're running for.
Adrienne Emmets, District 6.
Zach Tarakitas, Zone 4.
I'm Jen Hoffman, High School District A.
Clementine Lindley, District 6. Sarah Kotke, High School District A.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here tonight. Are there any school board members here tonight who are not running for election? If so, please stand. Teresa, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Teresa Larson, and I represent Zone 3 as part of the Heights.
That's great. And what about Billings Public School staff, faculty, principals, teachers, building staff? Do we have anyone who's just an employee of the district here tonight? Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I am Daniela Walsh. I'm the Director of Business Services and the Board Clerk.
And I'm Joe Halligan. I am the School Safety and Emergency Management Coordinator.
Wonderful.
Erwin Garcia, Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So again, the candidates for school board will be sticking around after we conclude our evening's conversation. They'll be located in the back. You can ask them their questions about all of the information you hear tonight. So as you all know, ballots are out for the Billings Public School election. You should have received them in the mail already. They are due back May 7th. So you still have time to mail or take them down to the county courthouse. Really important that we all engage in our civic duty and cast a vote. But before you do that, we wanted to give you a chance to learn a little bit more about what is on the ballot this year for Billings Public Schools and what it means for our community. As you know, city, county, and school board together have made public safety the #1 priority of this community. And so tonight we're going to learn a little bit about the school system's perspective on that. I'm going to introduce to you our school superintendent, Dr. Erwin Garcia, who's going to share some data and some details with you. Again, we'll be walking around handing out cards. Really encourage people to give us those questions. We want this to be an open conversation. But for now, I will turn it over to Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here. We really, really appreciate that. If you hear that my accent sounds weird, it's true. It's not your hearing. It's true. I learned English when I was 23 years of age. So I learned as an adult, and as you know, language, when you are that age, goes to a different part of the brain. It's not the same as a child, so that's why I have an accent. I try to speak Texan, though, but sometimes it doesn't work so well. So this is our mission. We exist to inspire, to educate, and to empower. And those three are very important concepts. Now, the question is, are we living up to those three standards? And I still think that we have a lot of room to go in these three areas. Inspiring. Think about a kindergartner. How do we inspire a kindergartner? How do we educate? You know, there's a lot of political agendas, left, right, and people that think that all kids should learn this, all kids should learn that. But I think we need to focus on education. We need to go back to the basics. And empower. Are we going to enable, or are we going to give the tools So our kids are successful. So when you don't have inspiration, education, and empowerment, then there is a void. So how do we fill that void? Well, we see it in our community. So we went back to our data for dropouts. We had dropouts, 275 dropouts last year. So then, we ask, actually, I want to show you a picture of the Project Engage. We invited today 125 dropouts today to have lunch with us. And we got about almost 40, between 40 to 50 kids in that room. That was amazing. And connecting to their families, connecting to their grandparents. Many of the kids have grandparents. They don't have parents. It's interesting. That's something that I learned. I wasn't expecting that you will see a lot of grandparents and not parents in the meeting. It's also interesting when you ask them, why? Why are you not in school? And they say, well, school is not for me. School is very difficult. I don't see myself in school. School is boring. And actually, those responses match the research that I want to show you, and I want to refer to that. So when a child doesn't have any of these three areas, not education because you're dropping from school, you don't have an inspiration, you don't have tools to be empowered, then they're easily manipulated. And if you read the article, Mexican cartels target America's last best place. If you read that article on NBC, you know that we have a cartel problem, a gang problem, and that gang and cartel problem, it is in our community. And it is affecting our youth. It's taking our youth hostage. If you think about this, think about inspiration. Hey man, you can be rich. You can get money really fast. We're going to teach you. Look, we support you. We're your family. We'll die for you. We're giving you a purpose. We're going to teach you. This is how you break into a house. This is how you break into a car. This is where you need to look for guns. You found them here. You find them there. You open this. This is how you do it. They're giving them that education. And they're giving them the tools. You see this 9mm? This is how you shoot. This is how you can use it. This is how you defend yourself. Oh, but if you don't have a gun, you have a knife. You can also use it. This is how you do it. Our kids are becoming targets, are being used because there's a gap, there's a void. And people think, well, that should be the district responsibility. Well, we have part of the responsibility. Absolutely. I mean, if I were to stand here and say, oh, we have no responsibility, we have a lot to do with this. But as you can see, there's more to it. This is more than a community, more than a school problem. This is a community problem. We have in our district goals and a strategic plan. I'm not going to expand on that. I've been in the community every Tuesday. We're doing a lot of training for our community. Trauma-informed practices, suicide prevention, parental empowerment, lots of sessions with the community. But I wanted to get your attention here, and actually that's the article on top. Mexican drug cartels are targeting America's best place. So I don't want to bombard you with all the information about youth being somehow involved in crime. And by the way, the crime that just happened with the standoff with some kids that were stabbing each other, 3 people got involved in that. We know there were dropouts within that group. And yeah, you look at the ages, 12, 13, 14. These are our kids in our community. And then you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because this is critical. Just as we're sending kids to Washington, D.C. for a science competition, Riverside kids, we're sending kids from Ben Steele to the national robotics competition. So we have kids that are absolutely bright in our community. Those kids are in the blue area. They're self-actualized, and those are probably your kids, your grandsons and granddaughters. They are already out there. But I guarantee you, those kids that are going to Texas for that national competition, that robotics competition, I guarantee you, those kids are not hungry. Those kids are not hungry. Those kids are now going home thinking, is it going to be too cold tonight? Is my dad going to be beating my mom? Is my mom drunk? Is she using crack tonight? What am I going to expect when I get home? Because sometimes people say, this is parental responsibility. Where are the parents? But what happens when you don't have parents at home? And there are many families where parents are not at home. Short story. We had the project engaged that we had today with the 40-something kids that went to the school district today. We had the same event last semester. We had a grandparent calling saying, what was the distance between the parking lot and the boardroom? I found that question to be very awkward. I actually was the one helping the lady. So what do you mean? The distance between the parking lot to the boardroom? She said, yes. How many steps do you think it's going to take me to get there? I'm still not understanding. Well, when I saw the lady, I understood. She had a walker. And she will take probably between 20 to 30 minutes to get from the parking lot to the boardroom. And she was the person in charge of a 13-year-old that dropped from school. A 13-year-old, because that was something that I learned. I was thinking 16-year-old, 17-year-old. No. 12, 13. Or you've heard, many of you have homeschooled your kids, and you were probably really good at it. Congratulations. But there are a lot of people that say we're homeschooling our kids, and those kids are not being homeschooled. Yes. So, in order for us to get our kids to be self-actualized, we have to meet the physiological needs. And this should be the parents' responsibility. But guess what? We have 600 homeless kids, 200 kids, 250 foster care kids in our community. So, whose responsibility it is now? Well, if they come hungry to the school, they're not going to learn. We need to feed them. Safety needs. Oh, that should be the community responsibility. When the funding formula for the schools in Montana was established, was 1984, and please correct me if I have the date wrong. 1984. Did we have police officers in the schools? So how do we fund police officers now? It's $500,000. We have to take money away from kids for tutorials and interventions so we can pay for police officers, because that money is not coming except from the money that belongs to the kids. But we're taking the money away from kids. Because somehow there are people around our community and in the nation, we've seen this, that attack our schools. So we ask teachers, how many of you feel safe in schools, middle and high school teachers? Only 65% of them said we feel safe in schools. So you have 35% of our teachers saying that they don't feel safe in schools. We ask the same questions to our middle and high school kids. Same question, the same percentage. 35% of the kids said, I don't feel safe in school, in middle and high school. So let's talk about whose responsibility that is. Because police officers is not cutting it. When you think about the number of counselors that we have per student, the ratio, we are almost between 400 to 450 kids per counselor. The national average is 250. That's the national average. If you think about administrators in our middle schools, I came from a system in Houston We had middle schools with 700, 800 kids. You had an administrator per grade level. 3 administrators plus the principal, that was 4. In many instances, we have with Title I, we have 2 more, 6 administrators. They manage discipline, they connect with the kids, they help de-escalate cases. How many administrators do we have in our middle schools? 1. Why? Because we don't have resources. Because the funding formula was established in 1984, was challenged in court. And that gave us some resources, yes. But we're stretched thin. But even that, in that case, we're still expected to meet all of these things, all of these needs, because we have an issue in our community. If you think what is the most common crime in Billings, Montana, think about that. What is the most common crime? If you were to tally the frequency of crimes, you would think it's theft. You would think is, I don't know, guns, illegal possession of guns. Is domestic violence. And then you get all of these domestic violent cases in our community. Then the kids are violent. They go to school, and the rest of the kids can get their education because that kid is beating up the teacher and the other students. So barbed wire, camera systems, intercom systems don't fix that. That's the challenge. You don't fix counselors with police officers. You don't fix counselors with fixing the alarm system. We need humans. And I want to show you some research on the topic. Who's counting about dropbacks? And by the way, this is today, Project Engage. We had a full house with a lot of kids from the Frameworks program because we want to enroll them into the Opportunity School, and we had a large number of dropout kids in that meeting. But this is the count. 276 last year, 262. So when you compound those numbers, in 4 or 5 years, you have 1,000 kids. And you would think, well, they're all working in McDonald's and Burger King, and well, I wish that was the case, right? Many of them probably doing HISET, yes. But where are those kids really? Well, you see them. All of a sudden, you see them, they're part of or organized, crime entities in our community, and some of them making really, really poor choices to the point where you see crime that engages taking life of another person. And the people involved are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Most of our dropouts, by the way, is 5%. But if you're Native American, 10%. So 5% is the average dropout rate, but if you're Native American, just at 10%. How do we get these dropouts? I wonder about that. How do we get all these dropouts? What happened? Well, if you're below proficiency by the 3rd grade, by the end of 3rd grade, you're 4 times more likely to drop out. But if you're below proficiency and you're poor, 6 times. If you're below proficiency, you're in poverty, and you're black or brown, Native American, that's 8 times more likely. And this is longitudinal study from Double Jeopardy. By the way, I encourage you to look at that data point. It's a study that tracked 4,000 kids from pre-K all the way to college. So it's a longitudinal study. And this is where the data is coming from. So if you're not reading on proficiency, and you're poor, and you're Native, or you're black, you have a large chance of dropping from school. So when we look at the incidents within our system, look at the amount of tobacco and vaping cases. But look at, this is high school. Look at the middle school. The middle schools are vaping more than the high schoolers. But then you ask the kid, why are you vaping? That's not good. That's not going to help you. My dad disagrees with you. Why? Yeah, we vape together. So you have the dad vaping with the kid. Okay? Look at the marijuana encounters, disorderly conduct, paraphernalia, distribution, weapons, assault, theft. So I went back to look at proficiency by race. This is our current data, 3rd through 7th grade, reading proficiency, math proficiency. I wanted to know, can we look at our data and see the national trends? Absolutely. If you're white in math, your proficiency is about 48%. In reading, your proficiency is about 57%. So this is Asian, white. Then if you're Hispanic, that number is 29% proficiency in math, 37% proficiency in reading. If you're native, that is about 18% proficiency in math and 26% proficiency in reading. So we have a gap, and that gap follows the national trend. Okay. This is data from Riverstone Health System that talks about our youth. This is our kids in Yellowstone County. This data was presented on January 16 in this same very room. Among high schoolers, 23% of our high schoolers consider suicide. Think about that. That's 1 of every 4 kids have considered suicide in Yellowstone County. 19% made a plan, 16% attempted suicide. We have a mental health problem in our community. 19% of the kids were bullied in schools or teased due to sexual orientation. 35% of the youth reported using marijuana by their 18th birthday. We're actually doubling the national average when it comes to suicide in Yellowstone County. We're higher than anyone else in Montana and double the national average. I counted the amount of beatings, kids beating adults in the building. By the way, we had 97 teacher resignations last year. 10 principal resignations. I don't think, Joe, you were a principal, you retired principal for so many years. I don't think you remember a year that we had 10 principals retiring. Okay, that happened last year. And I asked them, because I was meeting all the principals when I was being interviewed for this position, why? Most of the time, the answer was, I can't stand the beatings in the classroom. I can't stand it. And then I counted, okay, so we started with 31 in 2016. We're up to 81 now. And look at the amount of elementary cases. So we went from 33% to 86%. In the past, the middle schoolers and the high schoolers were the one meeting the teachers. Now the elementary kids. So now we have to open, because we have frameworks in our district, middle school frameworks, high school frameworks. Now we have to open elementary frameworks for behaviors. So if you think about beatings, I mean, I don't know how many of you have been in a classroom, but I was a principal, I was a teacher. I've seen so many things. So just to give you an example, child pulls the hair out of the head of the teacher, leaves a huge empty spot in the scalp, and all of the hair is here in the right hand of the child. Kicking, punching, biting. This is what we're dealing with. 97 teachers resigned, 10 principals resigned because of the same problem. Do we have a mental health problem in our community? That you can solve with barbed wire. You can put a sniper on a tower to prevent anyone from coming to the metal detector so they don't hurt our kids. Well, the problem is the people that are hurting our kids are in the schools. The problem is here. And if you ask By the way, oh geez, I need to show you these. This data is not better. This is middle schoolers. And you have the schools' names up there. And then when you ask, during the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? These are middle schoolers in our district. Look at the percentages. 19%. Ben Steele. Castle Rock, 23%. Lewis and Clark, you see the data up here. Did you make a plan to commit suicide? Look at the percentages. How many times did you actually attempted suicide? 1 time. 2 or 3 times. Right away, you see the trend here. Schools in poverty. If you attempted suicide during the past 12 months, did any attempt resulting in an injury, poisoning, or overdose that had to be treated by a doctor or nurse? Yes. Look at Medicine Crow. Oh no, this is Riverside. 13%. Look at Medicine Crow, 7%. The highest numbers. But you can see it happening not only in poverty, it happens everywhere. We have a mental health problem in our community. How do we solve this problem? So this is the root causes of crime. There's another conversation that's going to take us more time. But if we look at research, like for instance, the school research at the University of Chicago, they find that the best way to counteract the violence and the influx or the impact of poverty and high crime is the quality of relationships. Is people. People will be the ones really making the impact. You can put all the cameras you want, all the metal detectors you want. But if you don't have quality people that care for these kids, we're in trouble. Now, we have quality people, I can tell you that. The problem is that the quality people in our buildings are stress thin. That's the problem. These are the types of activities that really bring hope to our community. By the way, I partnered with Karen Gross and the OPI. We were able to get Karen in all of our high schools to do these activities. It's about leadership solutions. Kids were able to paint and solve problems. They got together with administration, with some of the trustees actually participated in that event, and we solved problems together. And this is the report that Karen sent us. But these are the things that can change the life of a child. It's not barbed wire. It's not dogs that are barking at the kids when they come to the school. It's people. And by the way, this is not me. This is the Secret Service. I just took some excerpts. Our first preventive strategy should be to make sure kids are respected, that they feel connected and belong in schools. This is from Johns Hopkins University Center for Safe and Healthy Schools. This says that the people that commit those heinous crimes against other kids, that come with a gun, shoot up the place, most of those kids have been targeted by bullies in the school. It talks about 42% of the shooters have experienced trauma, have been exposed to violence at home or at a young age, have experienced physical and sexual abuse, have had their own parents commit suicide. And if we were to talk about suicide, we're ranked number 1 in the nation, Montana. Number 1 in the nation per capita for suicide. Number 3 in the nation for mental health problems. Yet, we are ranked 51 in the nation for beginning teacher pay. Just think about that. It's not 50, by the way. It's not a mistake that I'm making. It's 51 for beginning teacher pay. 40 for average teacher pay. So, Our data points are concerning. The good thing is that we can do something about it if we do it as a community. And of course, there's a lot of research, and I highly encourage you to read this article. It's actually a research. The silent epidemic, it talks about dropout. Double jeopardy, I just mentioned that. And there's some other articles that you can research. So this is the rationale why we're trying to bring more programs to kids. By the way, these are 3 charter schools that were approved by the state that are run by a board. These are not private charter schools. These are public charter schools, okay? The intent behind these actions is to attend to the problem, the root cause of our problem. Number one, we have a problem which is proficiency by 3rd grade that we're addressing with the Kinder Ready program. We're bringing 300 kids, 4-year-olds to school. It's not a pre-K program because in Montana you can't say pre-K. But we're bringing 4-year-olds to school, 300, on the most vulnerable schools in the city. Orchard, Bench, and McKinley. Okay, three areas of the city. So we can give those kids in poverty, mostly minorities, an opportunity to start early mathematics and reading. That's one of the things that we're starting next school year. We have brought dyslexia services. That was another taboo in our community. Dyslexia, we never talk about dyslexia. We're bringing dyslexia services. We're training all of our teachers in IEPs and special education. There's more things. But this is part of the plan to get now our possible dropouts with a pathway for graduation. Pathway number 1 is the early college high school. Kids can obtain an associate's degree on the same day they get their high school diploma. Many of our kids that would otherwise not be interested in college, would not afford it, will have the opportunity to receive this. If you're asking in your mind, how are we paying for this? You know, well, people always ask that question. How are you paying for all of that? The state is paying for this. So there's a basic entitlement that we're using to pay for the 3 charter schools. The Opportunity School is intended to address the needs of kids that are high risk of dropping out, homeless, foster care, kids that have kids that are working full-time, kids that might be at risk of dropping from school. The Opportunity School is intended to support those kids. The Multilingual Academy, by the way, if you're thinking that this is for me to bring illegals from the border, this is not true. Because people have said that. You're bringing illegals. You have them at the Lincoln Center, at the basement. We already know that, Mr. Garcia. We caught you in the act. No, they think because I'm Garcia, I probably have a bunch of friends I'm bringing from the border. Please, that's not true. You know, people say, well, that's probably you, Mr. Garcia, making jokes. No, I took pictures of the messages I got about that. I welcome you to visit the Newcomer Center. People don't realize, the Multilingual Academy, people don't realize that we have people in our community that don't speak English. And they're not here because they are illegal. They're here because they're doctors and nurses that come from the Philippines, from Nigeria. I went with with Mayor Bill Cole to the international, we have a fine meeting with more than 50 languages represented there, right? Mayor, Mr. Mayor. People from all over the world. Germany, Ukraine, Kazakhstan. You know, we met with those people. They're nurses, they're doctors. Their kids, many of them don't speak the language. What are we going to do with those kids? Make them flunk? Because if you're in high school and you already have 17 years of age and you have 2 more years of high school and you don't speak the language, you will drop out. And people are having to make those decisions when they're in Colorado or in Florida. Should I be a doctor in Billings, Montana? Well, let me look and see what opportunities are there for my kids that don't speak the language because I just came from Nigeria. Oh, well, there's nothing. We might as well just go to Colorado or go to another part of the nation. We need that labor. Think about this. how many engineers we graduate. I remember looking at this statistic years ago. It might have changed. How many engineers we graduate every single year in the United States? The number back then, 20,000. How many engineers is India graduating every single year? 200,000 engineers. So of course we need engineers from India. Is that the ideal state? Maybe we need to do a better job educating our kids. But in the meantime, we need engineers, we need doctors, we need nurses. So that is the purpose of the Multilingual Academy. Okay? Now, if someone is illegal and wants to attend school, I am not the person that they need to talk to regarding whether they cross illegally or legally, if they have papers. That's immigration. That's not my job. My job is to educate every child that comes through the doors of Billings Public Schools. These are the reasons why people drop out. I mentioned some of those. I'm going to leave it there for you to read. And some of the I guess, staggering data points that I found. 74% of the kids that drop out regretted dropping from school. You know, I encounter 1 or 2 people in the community sometimes. I almost have dropped out and I'm successful. You are the exception. Most people that drop out are not successful. Okay? That is the reality. So we did a study, professionally run, in the month of October. It took 2 months to complete, by a national organization. The person that manages this organization is a former secret agent, and he is a former police officer. They're located in Minnesota. They research all of our facilities, all of our policies, all of our programs, and they made 58 recommendations. So those 58 recommendations are the ones that we put on the safety levy. So the safety levy ask is not me closing the door, writing some notes on a sticky note, and saying, here's my sticky note with my ideas of the things that we need to ask the community. I have no expertise and knowledge to be able to provide 58 recommendations. If you have left it up to me, I would have come up with 3 recommendations. Yeah, because I don't have much knowledge. They came up with 58 recommendations. And the 58 recommendations were beyond hardware, cameras, beyond that. You have a problem, my friend, in your community. You need more counselors, you need more nurses, you need more police officers, you need mental health specialists. And people ask me, well, you should put 10 officers, 10 mental health specialists. Well, before we put these numbers up, we research. I went to Chief St. John and I asked, if we need 8 officers, would you be able to provide us with 8 officers? He said, no, there's no way. We can get you probably 2. Because remember, we don't pay the entire salary and benefits. The city has to take care of the rest. So the city is already taking a huge part of their budget to support us in this process. So thank you, by the way, Mayor Cole, and members of the council here represented, for your support. So this is what we can actually do when it comes to police officers. 2, 3. Mental health specialists. We can advertise 10 positions. Why? Because we apply for a grant, we secure 1.5 positions, and man, it was so difficult to staff those 1.5 positions. Because there's no people that will take those jobs. Because they have to enter based on the teacher pay scale. And if a teacher in Billings Public Schools starts with $41,000 a year, tell me who's interested in actually doing that for our district. Few people will. Some people will because they love kids and they want to do the work with kids. So we're not going to park 10 positions here while 8 positions are just sitting there making interest in a bank somewhere. That's not right. So we said, no, this is a feasible number. We're going to shoot for that number so we can get more support to the grant funding that we have received for mental health. Gang prevention, those are retired police officers. They will be building relationships with the kids. They will be providing services, connecting kids to social workers, connecting kids for other services that we provide as a district or services in our community. So the total ask is for a $300,000 home value, because there's no homes that cost $300,000 in our community. That's another conversation that we can have. It's a $5 a month cost. Of course, this is estimated, because if your house is, 355, but that's the average cost. Now, if you live and you have to vote on two of the levy measures, that can vary the cost. So I encounter people in the community that say, I would vote for this. I don't need to know much information. It's safety. I care about safety. I encounter people like that. And I encounter people that say, I'm not voting for this. Okay. Why? Taxes. I don't want my taxes to go up. And that's still a valid response. I mean, everybody has their right? I'm not voting for this because you're bringing illegals to the district. Okay. Well, that's incorrect. I'm not bringing illegals, but you can still vote. I'm voting for this. I understand it. I haven't really done my research, but I will still vote for this. So everybody has their opinion. We don't even know how this is going to play out. We're hopeful this is going to pass, but we don't know, because we know that in our community, especially with taxation exhaustion, is difficult for many people. But for some people, this is absolutely critical to bring this support to the kids in our community. Okay, I want to stop here, and I'm going to open up for, is it questions now? Okay, good.
All right, everybody, just a reminder, we've been passing out cards. If you've got questions written down, please hold them up so that people can grab them. If you need cards, please just raise your hand so that we can get them in here. We've got some hot questions, so we're going to dive into it, and I've probably got a few more for you as well. But let's jump in here. Actually, before we do that, I do want to acknowledge, and Dr. Garcia mentioned this a little bit, schools are a product of the community that we're in, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the community is challenged by safety. So I want to just highlight to you your city council members, Mayor Bill Coles in the back, Deputy Mayor Mike Boyette, my ward mate Roy Neese for representing the Heights, and Council Member Bill Kennedy, former Yellowstone County Commissioner, for Ward 3, which is Midtown-ish, and then sitting next to him is former City Administrator Tina Volek. Any of us can handle your questions with respect to what's going on in the broader community in which our schools operate. So we know school board candidates will be sticking around after the meeting to field your questions. Please feel free to grab your council member as well and talk about those broader community issues. So let's dive in here with, I think, one of the questions that I see most often, Dr. Garcia, in the community, which is, why do we keep giving more and more money to schools and not seeing improvement in outcomes or in facilities? Are we just funding a malignant system?
Thank you. So I cannot speak for what has happened in the past. I mean, that's the reality. If I've been here for 5 years, hold me accountable for the past 5 years. I got here, the board wanted change. And when the board wanted change was because they knew we had to do a better job in multiple facets. That included financial. We've been carrying a deficit for the past, I don't know how many years. We're stopping that deficit this year with or without the safety levy. Okay? Whether we pass the safety levy or not, we are balancing our budgets. Okay? We already cut 34 positions, we closed a school, and we have actually, you're part of the safety committee. Thank you by the way, for helping us with the safety, with the budgeting committee. Thank you. So, Zach where's Zach?
He had to leave.
Oh, Zach had to leave. But Teresa is also part of that committee. We will balance our budget whether we pass the safety levy or not. So, balancing our budgeting, check, okay? Now, the system can be restored. I see it. Like, let me give you an example. Just from the beginning of the school year to now, we reduced the amount of fights by half at West High School and Skyview High School. If you look at the numbers of fight at certain day to a certain day, we reduce those numbers by half. When it comes to dyslexia and special education, we don't have to struggle anymore with programs or curriculum for the special education programs. So the system can be restored, but we have to really take into account, are we paying teachers the right amounts? When you don't have resources in the school system, and it isn't like, oh, we're floating with people, like the ratio between teachers and student ratios are super mountain, like comparing to other systems in the nation, we have way too many staff members supporting kids. That's not true. I already presented that information to the board. We're not having a bunch of people and the number of kids is that little. So why is it that we're stretched with resources in our school system? And not only us, if you think about Missoula, what happened in Missoula? They had to cut 90 positions this year. When you think about the number of schools that are being closed in our state, if you think about the number of people that are being laid off, if you think about the amount of safety levies and financial levies that the districts across Montana are asking, it isn't because everybody doesn't know how to manage a budget. Not only big districts are struggling, small districts are struggling too. So what is that telling us? And you know why small districts struggle? Because they can't hire teachers. Because no one can live with $35,000 a year paychecks. That's the problem. So you need nurses, you need counselors, you can't find them because you don't pay well. And to pay well, you need to increase your budget, and you don't have the money to increase your budget. So yes, we have a funding formula issue in our state. And by the way, the state of Montana says that it is the state's responsibility to provide a free and public education. It's not the taxpayer's responsibility. Well, of course, the taxpayers are funding the state. But when the state will close this cycle with about, people say $3 billion, but I don't know, I don't want to use those terms. But let's say $2 billion in surplus. And our schools are struggling, maybe there's something that we need to tweak in this system. I am hopeful that this is a great school system. We are going to be excellent, by the way. We're not excellent yet, but we will. We have the right people. We need to make some changes on our systems, how we teach, but that's the piece that I'm working on a daily basis in the district. So I'm hopeful for the future of our district. This is not throwing money at a problem. I'm here to stay, and you can hold me accountable. By the way, we have a transparency, safety, levy transparency committee. We already have 9 people that have subscribed for that transparency committee. If you're interested, you still have to put the time, because some people like to criticize, but they don't want to put the time. But if you want to spend the time, every 2 months, we can have the conversation about how we're spending the money on the safety levy.
Okay, we're gonna have to tighten up our answers, Dr. Garcia, because I got a real big pile here. All right, so let's dive into where you left off with a question from the audience. So if the school board wants change, or if you as superintendent want change, and you see the school funding formula as a root cause, what is the school board and you as superintendent doing to work with legislators and other elected officials to get the state funding formula addressed?
We're meeting with legislators. Actually, I've met with about 6 so far, and I have 2 legislators tomorrow. So it's actually the same conversation. We have an action group. There's 2 members of the Safety Advisory Committee that are part of that advisory group for the state, because they're getting together, working together to try to get a coalition of community members that are concerned, express their concerns to the legislators. So that is the part that I'm doing currently. But of course, part of that is we have to balance our budget. We can't be broke and always say, well, you need to fix a problem that we have. We need to fix our problem, then come back to the state and say, you see, we have a funding formula issue, and that's what we're doing at this time.
So next question from the audience. As Any taxpayer in this community knows we just went through a new property appraisal cycle, which resulted in significant increases to property taxes, which hard for property owners to bear, but also results in new revenues into city, county, state, and school board. So this question says, my school district 2 levies increased by 40% last year, totaling about $493. Why isn't the safety levy being taken out of this increase?
Because we are already capped. So the funding formula has a max and a base. And then you can be funded between the base and the max. Once you get the max, there's no money coming onto you. So when you think about all these property taxes on the property values going up, you're already maxed. You're already maxed out. So you already have no way to increase your revenue unless you increase the number of students that you have. But if you look back at our numbers, we have maintained for the past 10 years the same between 16,000 to 17,000 kids. We're sitting right now 16,600 kids. So we have maintained the number of students with the same number of people. And once you reach that max value, the money is sent somewhere else. And that's how you end up as a state with money in your reserves that now you don't know really what to do with it. Well, we have $2 billion. What are we going to do? How are we going to invest this money back to the system? So we are maxed, and that is the problem.
Great. So our next question sort of tails on to that. If the system is what it is right now, you'll do some work to change that over time. But who have you tapped at the district, if anyone, to research alternative ways to fund the schools rather than just coming to the voters?
Well, there's no alternative way to fund the school system. The fund is already pre-established. So there's little I can do. We can be creative. We apply for grants. This year we were able to secure almost $2 million worth of grants. And that's how we're being creative with grants. We apply for grants, like youth court. We have a grant with youth court for truancy. We have grants for Project Aware. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Project Aware. That's how we train all of our Tier 1 and Tier 2 behavioral process for our school system. Project Aware is expiring next school year, and it costs a lot of money to run. It's almost $500,000. That's grant funded. So there isn't really much we can do. Yeah, we reduce positions, we maximize positions, we cut positions at the Lincoln Center. We had our chief information officer position, he resigned. We never hired for that position. We cut the position, secretaries, and we do that all the time. But that's never going to be able to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be, because we're talking about millions of dollars. Even if I were to fire every single person at the Lincoln Center, we still wouldn't be able to solve the funding problem that we have within our schools.
Great. So we're going to turn to some questions about the scope of the levy. And one of the most common questions that at least I've seen on social media is whether or not this proposal that's going to the voters is both too big and too small. I've seen a lot of questions that say, if we really have a problem with teachers, why are we adding so many admin staff? Aren't we just sort of larding up the Lincoln Center instead of paying our frontline teachers? But also, if the problem's as big as you say it is, what are 3 safety officers going to do? So how would you respond?
Yeah, so if you notice here, there are some positions that we have to build in within our system that go beyond the natural structure of our funding formula. So let me give you an example. West High School. So I come to the district, and West High School has a bunch of fights. We have kids coming through the doors, leaving doors open. So right away, I'm looking at the numbers for administrators and counselors, and we're 1 counselor short, because the ratio is about 550 students per 1 counselor. That's extremely high. So what did I do? Because of the safety of the kids, I hired a counselor. So I had to hire that counselor. And then I had to hire another assistant principal, because the number of assistant principals compared to Skyview and Senior is the same, but West has 2,200 kids. So those decisions, think about nurses. You would think West High School has a nurse, right? Common sense. No, We can't afford a nurse at West High School. The nurse at West High School has to be shared with another school because we don't have the resources. So when people think about positions, we're not beefing up the Lincoln Center, by the way. None of these positions is people at the Lincoln Center. These are people working with schools. So if you think about a safety coordinator, by the way, Joe Halligan is here. He's the safety coordinator for our district. That money, I'm sorry, Joe, to tell you this, but that money belongs to the kids and these 4 tutorials. But we had to take we had to take away from kids because there's safety issues. So we need a safety coordinator. That's how we hire a retired police officer, and he resigned, but now Joe is in the position. But then when you think about, for instance, audits, let's check all of the doors at every single campus to see if all the doors actually lock. Well, the money has to come from somewhere. And yeah, we can take money away from kids. That's gonna cost money. Either you pay a contract that is gonna be quite substantial, or you hire somebody to do that. That is exactly what we're recommending. So we're recommending safety specialists, 1 in elementary, 1 in high school, to be able to do those jobs. Because guess what? We have doors that don't lock and nobody realizes, unless you have someone that says, by the way, this door is not working. So are 20 more doors in the district that we need to create tickets for, that we need to follow through so we get those doors fixed. So that's cost that is linked directly to the schools, not to the Lincoln Center. At the Lincoln Center, we're trimming positions, not adding positions.
Okay. Next question from the audience. The stated school levy is about $5 million, but the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department is $5.4 million, and they have 57 full-time sworn employees. Are we, through this levy, effectively creating our very own school police force?
Of course not. We're not creating a police force. The only difference is that the district serves 17,000 or 16,600 kids. And we're the scope of the work that we do with almost 3,000 W-2s. So yes, Yellowstone County has 52 people that, support the infrastructure and the system. We have a system that is massive. I mean, if you think about 3,000 people receiving W-2s in our district, we are probably second in the city, probably down below Billings Clinic. So it is a massive system. And the system is not filled with police officers because, again, you can bring the National Guard to our school system. The mental health problems are not going to go away because of that. You need people to work with kids. If you have 450 students per counselor, that ratio is not right. You need more counselors in the school to work with kids. Because remember, the mental health issues that I show you based on the data are critical. And that can only be solved when you have people working with kids. Not at the Lincoln Center, at the school with kids.
Great, thank you. If you have questions, remember, get your hand in the air to get a card, or if you have a question on a card, please get it up. We've got a good stack here, but there's still time for more. I want to do what I can to get everybody's questions in. So our next question, Dr. Garcia, we're going to step back to what you were talking about having people just checking the basics, like are the doors locked? The ballot indicates this money could be used for maintenance of the school. Almost anything in the school needs to be in operation for student safety. So why did the board include maintenance of the school generally, and what will the board or you as superintendent be doing to prevent future boards from using this for ordinary building maintenance?
So that is exactly why we have a safety transparency committee, because we don't want to be spending money where we shouldn't be spending the money. The ballot language that is on the safety levy is coming straight from the OPI. The OPI says Building Reserve Safety Levy. That is what OPI expect us to put the money on. When they create the chart on the funding formula, the Budget Reserve Safety Levy, that is the only place where we can put the money of the safety levy in. So it's not my call, it's not my choice, but that language, people get the conflicting message. Oh, that is building reserve. Oh, that means that you can use it for all these things. No, we can't use it for all these things. Every year, we have to pass an audit. And we have passed the audit for 16 years. So there's nothing fishy happening at the Lincoln Center with the money. I can tell you that, okay? The safety levy is not the exception. We're not gonna be using safety levy to buy a boiler or an AC unit or books. No, the safety levy is for safety. That's why the Safety Transparency Committee, the intended purpose of the committee is to remain as long as we have this levy. There should be a group of citizens that are tracking how we are spending the funds of the safety levy. I think that that's a mistake that I can see a superintendent making or an organization making. Not tracking and informing people. Once we pass, we close the door, we shut the door, and we do our little business here. And people, it might be the right thing, but people don't know. Well, that's the problem. If people don't know, people don't trust. So we have to be absolutely transparent with the community, how we're spending, where the money is. If we didn't hire for one of the positions, that money can be in a bank sitting getting some interest. It has to be used for safety. It has to be used for safety.
Just as a reminder, everybody should have received their ballots in the mail. Those mailed out last week and are due back to the county election office by May 7th. Really encourage everybody to remember to vote in this election. And so let's talk about that ballot language a little bit. The language of the mill levy seems to require the future board to assess the mill regardless of whether or not the funds are needed. So why did that ballot language not be more flexible? Something like up to X number of dollars, so that the district is not required to tax in years of future surplus?
That's a great question. So number one, there's a problem with money instead of mills. The problem with money is that money is losing value. I don't know how many of you have been affected by inflation. Well, districts across the nation are being affected by inflation. So $1 million 5 years ago is not $1 million now. So we cannot be asking for a money amount, because the money amount, I don't know what's going to happen with our government and how we do things in the future. But inflation keeps going up. The value of the money goes down, and the things that you need to purchase are going up the opposite way. So that's not smart. So going back to that language, if you think about camera systems, camera systems, we run an estimated cost between $5 million to $19 million to replace our camera systems in the district. 5 to 19 million. The 19 million price tag is way too expensive. It's AI technology. It reads your face, reads your car's plates. It tells you, since you're walking from the parking lot, it will tell us right away who you are. We don't want to do that, okay? But okay, we go with the 5 million price tag. And then we spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years installing. The challenge is that the life cycle of that system is between 5 to 7 years. So let's say we install all the cameras in year 1. We're going to have to go back to the voters in 7 years or 5 saying, hey, by the way, we need more money. Remember the camera systems? They're outdated. We need more money. It's not only the camera systems, it's the alarm systems, it's the systems that work behind the camera system. Think about servers. Medicine Crow. Medicine Crow is not an old building. The camera systems got completely obliterated probably 3 months ago. The servers got overheated. That was a $60,000 cost for the district immediately. And that building is relatively new. So going back to the voters for camera systems, intercom systems, alarm systems, so is safety going away? I hope that in 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, crime is very low, no gangs, no abuse. I don't know if we're going to be on Earth if that's happening. Yeah. If that's the case, the board has the authority, and that was discussed on the board meeting, to say, we don't need this money anymore. We're going to reduce the meal amount. So the board has the authority to reduce the meal amount. Remember, these board members are members of the community. They're taxpayers and they're representing you. So if the board members in 5 years say, you know what, this is a lot of money, we don't see all these needs, we can reduce the meal amount. Rather than coming back to the voters again in 5 years and say, we need to repair all the camera system that you use, as an example.
So one of the persistent rumors in the community that I'm sure you've had to answer many, many times is you were offered free metal detectors. Why did you not take them? Why are you now taxing us for what you could have gotten for
I
free?
love that question. You know, I love that
I
question.
know you love that question.
Because, you know, I read the article on one of the nearby districts, okay? It's a small district. They have 500 high school kids, okay? They take 45 minutes to get 500 kids to the metal detectors. 2,200 kids is 4 times that. 45 times 4, that is like 3 hours or more. So then you think, okay, it's minus 20, and then you have to pass 2,200 kids to those metal detectors because we're not gonna do like other districts do. You know what other districts do? And I read it too, in Montana. We're only going to do metal detectors on Wednesdays. So the kids know that Wednesday is metal detector day. Okay? Yeah, it's true. This is a fact. By the way, the nearby district, they don't do it every day because it's so much time. I asked, when these people came with the 58 recommendation, I asked them, I don't see any metal detectors here. Why? People will ask me. They say, well, Erwin, think about this. If you have 1,000 kids waiting outside of the building to get to the metal detector, that is the perfect time and place for someone to come with a gun and do something to those kids. You don't want to have 1,000 kids piled up waiting to enter through a metal detector. Plus, think about West. You think about West, the kids come in, it's 9 a.m., you finish the last kid on the metal detector, now you're getting ready to go to lunch. Because kids go to lunch in our schools. Thousands of them go to lunch, and then they come back. So what happens when they go to lunch? Metal detectors again. And then the kids that go to the career center, from West is 400 something kids. So they have to enter, go to the career center, but you have to have metal detectors in the career center, of course. And then they have to come back to West for the metal detectors again. It sounds like a great idea, but the applicability is not there. It's not a viable solution.
One of the things you've said tonight and in many of these presentations is that the core of the problem that you propose to address is not what happens outside the schools, but what's going on inside of them. So the question here from the audience is, how far does that obligation go? Is it reasonable to expect the school district to correct problems caused by community root causes, like drugs, family violence, and sexual violence?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I mean, we can have another conversation about the roles of parents in our community. What happens when kids don't have parents? What happens with boundaries? You know, today we witness a kid, tiny little creature, 4 years old, beating mommy, pushing her around, doing a tantrum, kick her once, kick her twice. I'm like, man, you need to put some boundaries in this kid. But I give you tried. You tried to teach that parent what she needs to do with that child and see what happens, right? In the past, if you did something to your teacher and you got a complaint, oh, wait, because you got home. Something was waiting for you. Your parents, right? The parents believe the teacher right away. Things have changed. So now the teachers are being careful because teachers are afraid of the consequences of reporting certain things. So the challenge is we're living with these issues on a daily basis. I cannot just put my hand in the sand and wait for something miraculous to happen in our community where we don't have these issues. I have to attend to those issues because we can't sustain a system that loses 100 teachers every year because of the same problem. We can't sustain principals. If I have 10 principals every year rotating out of the school system, we're not going to have a system. So we have to address the issue. And yes, we have to address the issue now. Gangs, we have to address it now. Dropouts, we have to address it now. It's hard for me to pretend that we're going to go home and educate the parents. I mean, we're doing a lot of community meetings trying to educate parents. We do commercials. We do social media. We do live streaming. We have flyers. In some community meetings, we have 5 people, 10 people. We tried. One of our schools, we did pizza night. We thought, oh man, we're gonna get them with pizza. We had to take boxes of pizza because people didn't come to the school. Because you know what, in the minds of many parents is like, oh, there's no problems. School is doing well. My kid is doing okay. So I don't have to go to the school. Now you see more involvement if you go to the West End, you go to Ben Steele. We call it a parent night, you got 60 people right away. So we cannot put the hand in the sand and expect that something miraculous is gonna happen. As a superintendent of this district, I have to attend to those needs. The mental health, think about this, suicide. We had this employee, 3 weeks absent, one of our teachers. 3 weeks absent. We're looking for the teacher. What happened? How is she doing? She couldn't come to work because her child was attempting suicide on a daily basis. And we asked, why? How can we help you? She said, well, I tried. My next appointment is 3 months away. 3 months to get an appointment. So if we have the conditions in our community when we have mental health and you have a suicidal child and you have, social media controls at home, because people say, well, ban cell phones at the school. But the kids go home and watch 4 hours of social media on their cell phones. So the problems are real, and we cannot deny the facts that we have work to do with our kids. And as long as we have them in our system, we have to attend to those things. We can't have a child attempting suicide in the school and then telling the parent, yes, ma'am, go home, but yeah, it's gonna take about 3 months for you to get the help that you need. That's why we applied for a grant. We got a grant, 1.5 positions we got through that grant. And let me tell you, that's how we help that child. With that 1.5, it's one person that is full-time and then a part-time counselor / mental health because the person has a training. But we have almost 17,000 kids. So the need is so great that we cannot ignore it.
Okay, we have 8 questions in 16 minutes. We're gonna do it. We're gonna get through these. All right, so let's talk about the most challenging violent students in the school. What are the consequences today for children who are causing some of these most serious challenges?
Now we are, number one, if the child is committing a crime, we are working with law enforcement. I mean, past other times when crime was committed and we're just gonna protect you. No, if you're committing a crime, we're getting the police involved, number one. Number two, we have, our mental health specialists. We have social workers in some of our schools, some. We're connecting them with resources that we have in the community. Riverstone Clinic is a great resource that we use frequently. We have Frameworks program, which is if the child loses the opportunity to be in the school because of aggression, beating somebody up, and we find reason, we take that child to a more restrictive environment, so the child goes to the Lincoln Center. So we have classrooms at the Lincoln Center on the 3rd floor where kids have to pay the consequences. It puts more pressure on the parents because now the parents have to drop the child and pick up the child. And many parents don't want to do that. They just want to send the kid to the school. Now they have to drive the kid up to the school. So we have the program for middle and high school. Some kids spend 2 weeks there. Some kids spend a full month. The program is amazing. This year we've done an amazing job with the Frameworks program. It's not like a prison environment. It's high expectations, a lot of academics, but we're giving the kids a lot of opportunities to explore. To the museums, we assemble a teepee together. They're being a part of the culinary program. We have a culinary program at the Lincoln Center, teaching them how to cook, trying to get those kids inspired while we educate them. But again, now the challenge is the elementary kids with the behaviors, so now Frameworks Elementary will have to follow kind of the same model.
So along those lines, as you look to bring new counselors into the school, whose values will they be presenting to the students? How do you instruct the counselors as to what types of value systems they're allowed to impart?
So we are retraining all of our counselors. By the way, this is probably, from what I hear, is the first time that we actually gather all of our counselors and we have the same threat assessment protocols, by the way, which is great. We are training them on grief, so how to deal with grief within the school system. We're training them on our mission. We have a mission, and that mission is clear, is to educate, empower, and inspire our kids. So the values are to restore the lives of the kids, I mean, as much as we can.
Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is now allowing chaplains to serve in public schools. Is this something you've considered?
I would love the idea, but I'm not so sure that we would get, I don't know if the board would be open to an idea like that, or even the community. Personally, that's an idea that I would like to explore. I'm fine with that. But this is it could be a divisive topic. Instead of uniting us or putting us on the same page, it can actually divide us even further. So I will take it with caution.
Okay.
And before I would make any decisions on that matter, I will always consult with the board, and the board will have to consult with the community. I wouldn't be able to make that decision on my own.
Speaking of other states, the state of Wyoming funds schools by taxes from natural resources. Montana seems to keep blocking coal, timber, mining projects. Are you as superintendent or any of your board members advocating for more resources into the school system through different regulations that would empower our natural resource industry?
So since we're capped, like for instance, supposedly we received coal money, it was about $300,000. We didn't get anything of that because again, we're maxed. So we have a Robin Hood system. This is how the system has been designed. Because you have an entire area of the state that is true, they can't afford to have counselors, nurses, and psychologists, and special education teachers because they don't have kids. They still have to provide an education. So how are they being able to provide their education? Think about that. Well, then you are providing that education. You are providing that education. So yes, there are resources coming from coal and from agricultural resources, but at the end of the day, what we see in our state is the tax base of Yellowstone County, the monies get received from our community that exceed our maximum of resources is being shared with the rest of part of the state, probably half of the state. Now, the moral or the ethical implications of that, I mean, I understand that many districts wouldn't be able to operate. If you have a high school with 11 kids, you need athletics, you need a principal, you need you need a nurse. 11 kids can't fund one position, but you still have to provide the apparatus. You still have to have a building for those kids. So that money is not coming from those local resources. It's a Robin Hood system. We're taking away from the biggest city, in this case, Billings. But the challenge is that now we're struggling with resources as well. So that's why the funding formula has to be adjusted.
So questions about funding formula and natural resources, I'd be remiss not to recognize legislator Sherry Essman, who's here. Really appreciate having our state leaders. And to that end, what is the school district doing to more effectively coordinate with state, city, and county law enforcement agencies, hospitals, mental health, existing parents, churches, the infrastructure that exists already that is trained, capable, and able to work? What are you doing to coordinate with those external parties?
So we have a meeting that every quarter we're meeting with the city, all of the city administrators, with Yellowstone County as well. On the next meeting, we're inviting all of the superintendents of the nearby districts are invited to a meeting with us. We also have Big Sky Economic Development in that meeting. So those meetings are happening every quarter. That's where we think about implications, decision making that impacts beyond Billings Public Schools. We have a really great relationship with the mayor, hospitals, and businesses. I'm a member of both Big Sky Economic Development. I'm an ad hoc member of those committees, the same as the Village Chamber of Commerce. So we have established those relationships. Of course, are there opportunities to expand and grow? Absolutely. We have great relationships with both universities. So the relationships up there, there's a lot of working groups that are helping us craft the decision making for our district, as well as we're informing their decision making so we can be more consistent.
One of the things that the community talks a lot about is what is going to be the outcome of the levy if it passes? Will we see, or do you have projections on performance data that if this bond is implemented, here's what we can expect to see in student performance?
Well, because this is about safety, we already have the baseline data. So when it comes to data, we already know how many suspensions, how many fights, how many cases of drug abuse or substance abuse, or all of those data points we're using and we'll be tracking. We also have the Montana youth data points that are collected by the OPI every single year. We're using those data points, the number of attempts to suicide or suicide ideation, the data that I show you for middle school and high school. We're using those as baselines because we need to see how that is somehow transferring into better and safer conditions for kids. When it comes to student achievement, we already have the data points by subgroup, by socioeconomic. Those data points will be shown as part of the overall growth and when it comes to proficiency of our students within the city. So all of that data will be shared in community meetings across town.
So speaking of student performance, we know that in this state, not every student's going to go to college. In fact, I think about half head right into the workforce. So what is the school district doing, and will you be doing anything with these new resources to increase teaching students real-world skills like welding, carpentry, plumbing, heavy equipment, driving, mechanics, electrical work?
So the safety levy, again, is not for that. So the safety levy is only for safety, but we are, as you know, we apply for 3 charter schools. Those are intended to give our kids technical opportunities in computer sciences. There's a criminal justice pathway. All of that is paid, and there's no relationship to the safety levy. It's absolutely the things that we have done as a district. The application to the charter school system allowed us to receive it's going to be about $1 million every year to support those students in those programs. When we think about programs at the different schools, we're expanding AP opportunities for kids. We're expanding dual credit opportunities. So we're not taking away from some kids in an area of town to give to the certain kids in another area of town. So we are progressing in the quality of programs and services, but we don't have to take away from others. We're maximizing resources with the resources that we currently have. For instance, dyslexia services, that's not going to cost you anything as a taxpayer. We got a grant, 3 years. We're going to train all of our teachers in dyslexia services. So with even the person that we hire for dyslexia, we pay from a grant. So we're looking for resources because there are some things that we have to do for our kids that the taxpayers are not going to be able to provide because we're already maxed out. Yeah.
Okay, your final question, we're going to do it as a 2-part question, okay? If the safety levy fails, what will happen next? What will you have to cut? And then part 2 is the ballot question is actually 2 questions, an elementary levy and a high school levy. What happens if one passes and the other does not?
What happens if one passes and the other does not? If we have an elementary safety levy that passes, we're going to use the resources for elementary. If the high school district doesn't get the safety levy, we won't be able to provide those funds to the high school district. But immediately, we'll start our campaign for the high school levy if it doesn't pass. If we don't pass none of the levies, then we're going to reinitiate the safety levy conversation again for the public. We need to re-educate and keep bringing this information forward. Now, when it comes to the cuts, we're facing some challenges. As you know, we had to close a school. I didn't come from Texas thinking, first thing I want to do, close a school. That doesn't make anybody popular. That's not really exciting to do. But those are things that you have to do. If you want to balance your budget, you have to take measures. And that's a measure that saved us about $3 million. Cutting 34 positions, that's not easy. We're talking about jobs, real jobs. Cutting 34 positions is another $3 million. So with all of those measures, we're going to balance our budget. So the budget will be balanced. The challenge is that we're still 51 in the nation for teacher pay. So the budget conversation is we have low teacher pay, lack of programming. Think about GT, gifted and talented. If you have a child that is gifted and talented in our district, we will serve you after 5th grade. In 6, 7, and 8, there's no services for you because we can't afford it. So you see, you're taking resources away. So if we continue having these challenges, we're going to have to say, okay, are we providing tutorials for these kids that are not reading on grade level? Or are we going to maintain the contract with the police department that costs us $500,000? Are we going to with the camera systems that we have as senior, one of these days they're not going to work. We're going to have to say, well, no cameras. And then parents will come back. My child was bullied. I need to see the video. Well, ma'am, there's no video. Right? So those are the difficult decisions that we're going to have to make when it comes to budget in general, but when it comes to the safety levy, if the safety levy passes for the elementary, we can only use it for the elementary.
Great. Please join me in giving Dr. Garcia a round of applause. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time and attention tonight. As we close, I want to ask once again for the candidates for Billings Public School Board to stand and just sort of give a flag so that we can see where you are. If all the candidates could stand. If you want to stop and ask questions to them about anything you've heard tonight, you now know where they are. Are there any school board members who are still here? Okay, Teresa can also answer your questions. I do want to recognize, you all can be seated. I do want to recognize our community grassroots volunteers. Karen and Ione, can you stand up, please? If you have questions about if you want to help, if you want to be getting signs out, please reach out to these two ladies. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. One of the most important things that we can do in our community to address crime and improve public safety is to be out in the community. So I do just want to make a brief announcement of the upcoming Day of Community Service. That is this Saturday, April 27th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you, your church group, your community group, your family, if you want to get out and volunteer and make this community a better place, you can go to justserve.org and sign up to volunteer. There are projects all over the community. They are partnering with Bright and Beautiful Billings, so if you want to do some cleanup activity, you'll have an opportunity to do that as well. As we close, I want to thank Billings Public Library for hosting us tonight. Please help me thank them by stacking your chairs so that staff don't have to stay here a little bit longer. If you have any questions about anything, please reach out to the folks in the room. Pam, did I miss any announcements?
We want to give you an opportunity to find the trustee candidates. So the high school candidates are going to sit at the table over here. So if you have a question and you're trying to decide who you might vote for, you've got both of them sitting there and they could answer the question. The elementary will sit at the back. So that's Clementine and Andrea. And Zach didn't make it back. His child got locked out of the house, so he was going to come back. But he doesn't have an applicant. He doesn't have an opponent, so he will win. So, but I really do encourage you to talk with the trustee candidates because there's been really little time that you could get to know them. So please take time to meet them. Some of them have brought literature about their campaign that they'd like to give to you. So thank you. It was wonderful to have you.
Please give a final round of applause to our task force, our community task force volunteers who made this all possible. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your interest. Good night. Drive safely home.